All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to get started at 6 p.m. My name is Gary Keith. I'm chair of the School Building Committee, and I want to appreciate, thank you for coming out tonight, and those of you that are watching on the live stream or maybe signing on sometime down the road to watch the presentation. We've reached a milestone last month with the Massachusetts School Building Authority in our first submittal, the first phase, if you will, of the feasibility study. And so we felt it was appropriate to come out and share the information that we've gathered so far. Everything's been posted so far on our website. We don't have anything new. The presentations for our meeting are there, the minutes of our meeting, but this is an opportunity to sort of summarize that and tell you what's in the works as we move forward. So our agenda tonight, as I said, we're going to go over everything that we've gathered so far. A big piece of what we call the preliminary design program, this first phase report, is what we call educational visioning and planning. When we work with the School Building Authority at the state level, before you even talk about the physical aspects of a school building project, a big part of it is what are you going to do in the spaces, and how are you going to lay out those spaces before you ever talk about a building. And that's been a big effort that Mark Bodwell will go over that's occurred over these last few months. The progress so far, as I mentioned, and then the next steps, and then we'll have a session for Q&A at the end. There'll be a mic down front that I'll ask you to use if you have any questions moving forward. So our school building committee is so big it needs 2 slides. So I'm not going to read all the names. There are 25 voting members and 1 non-voting member. So a total of 26 members, a combination of community members, of town officials in various roles, school administration, and school staff. The School Building Authority at the state level, I know because they've told us, they feel our committee is too big. But they told us that when we built this building, because the committee is basically the same exact size with basically the same exact representation. And we felt that was the best way for the town of West Bridgewater to move forward with a project of this scale and the scale that we're talking about for their elementary school. Because if we get as many people with the varied interests that they represent around the table throughout the whole process, then I think it brings forward the best possible project and best outcome we can. And that's what we've been doing. And I want to thank the committee members. I know we have several. Can I have the committee members, school building committee members that are here raise their hand? I want to thank them for their participation so far. The heavy lifting is yet to come, even though we've been together since June of last year. I want to talk about the feasibility study. Those of you who participated in the town meeting in October of 2023, that's when I came before you with the request for the $1.2 million for the feasibility study. And that's the total amount. Our reimbursement with the Massachusetts School Building Authority is 54.7% for this phase of the project. But the total expenditure is the $1.2 million. So where that's going to is $320,000 goes to our owner's project manager, PMA. I'll introduce them in a second. And then the architect and engineering design and site investigations, our architect designer is HMFH, and that's $880,000. That's the $1.2 million. So that's the contracted amount for both those firms. That's the total feasibility study allocation. So our project team, and you're going to hear from them later, but Mitch Miller and Sean Burke are here from PMA. So the way the process works, once our school building committee was put forward by the Massachusetts School Building Authority, we actually report to them. They approve the roster. Then we started the process once the feasibility study was approved by town meeting. We went forward to start the process of hiring the owner's project manager, OPM. So that's the first phase that we did. So that's what we did probably up until March of last year after the authorization. We don't have complete say over this. We do it in partnership with MSBA. If they're putting forward 54.7% of the money, they have input into both the owner's project manager as well as the architect. Next, we went, after the project manager was on board, we hired our architect, and that was HMFH, and we have James Lehman and Stephanie McNeil here. They'll be presenting as well. And that was the second step. After the OPM is on board, we work with the OPM to hire the architect. And this is both the OPM and the architect are a competitive bidding arrangement with the Massachusetts School Building Authority. And again, we have input on that, but we work together and jointly with them. So that went on from roughly the summertime until August. Basically, we were on board with HMFH. Once that process starts, then we get into the start, the meat and potatoes of the project itself. A couple of headlines before I turn the floor over to Superintendent Bodwell on the educational plan. We have no final decisions. The two main decisions the school building committee have made to date. One was the site, and you'll hear more about this, but I'm just giving you the headlines right now. When we started this, the idea was to look at Roselle, Spring Street, and Howard. We eliminated Spring Street right away. We were focused on Howard next. We had issues with septic there. Most of you know that's the fields out behind Howard School are also the main municipal septic system for all those buildings in that area. Police and fire, this building, the senior center, the library, all those buildings feed into that. So it's basically at capacity. So that forced us back to Roselle, and that's where we are now. Is it a done deal? No, we're still doing some due diligence there, but that's the site we were focusing on. But there is no final design. There are conceptual costs and conceptual outlines on paper that we've looked at, but there are no schematics. That comes next. So that's the number one decision that the school building committee has made to date, is the site. Second is design and enrollment. We are looking at two options. We are looking at a pre-K to 4 configuration and then a pre-K to 6 configuration. So the idea being, if it's pre-K to 4, you would take grade 4 out of the Howard School, combine it with Spring Street and the existing Roselle. And then the second one would also take grades 5 and 6 out of Howard School for a total configuration. Those are the two major decisions that we've made. You'll see during the presentation, you'll see a reference to grades 1 and 3. Because the School Building Authority started with Roselle, we have to do a design option that looks at grades 1 and 3, even though we have no interest in pursuing that, because that doesn't really gain us anything by just replacing the existing configuration at Roselle, but we're mandated to do that. But the two options we're looking at are pre-K to 4, pre-K to 6, and focus today on the Roselle McDonald School site. So I just want to put those headlines out there for you before we move on. Superintendent?
Thank you, Gary. Mark Bodwell, Superintendent of Schools, my 5th year as superintendent. I've been in West Bridgewater since 1997, and I was on this school building committee when this building was built, and we opened the building back 10 years ago. Very important part of this process is the educational plan, which resulted in a 90-page document that is part of our submission. I'm going to go through parts of that today to give you some background information on that. Oops. Going the other way. What is the big part of this is the educational visioning. We have worked closely with our educational consultant, with our architects, and our OPM, but not exclusively. We've also involved a lot of people within the district. We've had listening sessions where we're gathering information. We'll talk a little bit about the school tours that we've gone on. We've had various visioning sessions and programming workshops. The goal is to build a school for our students' future and not our past. So we really want to be progressive and smart in the design of a school program that meets the needs of all of our students. So when we look at our visioning group, we had a very strong working group of 10 individuals, which included district personnel, building personnel, and classroom teachers and people, boots on the ground. So this group was part of our school tours as well as some of the visioning sessions. We also had a full-day programming workshop where we met with a much larger group, and you can see all the names of the people and their roles. Again, important to gather information from a variety of different people to really see what is the vision for the West Bridgewater Elementary School moving forward. And I think we got a lot out of that. I think it was a full day, but a very important day in terms of helping to build our educational plan. Early in the process, back mid-September, our group of 10 in our visioning group toured one day. We went to 3 elementary schools, similar in some ways, but different in others. We went down to Wareham, we went over to Westwood, and then finished in Easton. And it was a great opportunity for our staff to look at what we want in a building, and maybe some things we don't want or we don't need at this time. So I think it's important to look at all aspects of new schools, so when we go into building, this school or designing it, we have a good frame of knowledge and information. And I know, speaking from this process of this middle senior high school, well over 10 years ago, we did something very similar. And we found it very important and impactful because, 10 years later, the design of this program, this school works very well. And that's through the efforts of a lot of different people. So as a school building committee, we led project goals as we move forward, making sure we had a good process and community support. It's important to us in the committee to have an open process which is clear to the public, with making sure we have public buy-in and public support. Posting things on our website, posting things on our newsletters, Facebook, and providing information as often as possible at coffee hours and at school committee meetings. We want a dependable solution. We want a solution for problems that may come up, so we know what we want in a building. We want to make sure we vet all ideas, so we make sure they're the most useful for our students and our staff. Another important goal was making sure it's a community facility. I think it's very appropriate that we're here tonight in this auditorium. While we have a basketball game going on, we had a meeting up in the Learning Commons earlier. We want to make sure this space at the new school is used by the entire community, including gym space. And it came loud and clear, having proper space for our youth as well in the buildings. And of paramount importance is cost and schedule, making sure we're on time and on or under budget. The building needs to be appropriate for West Bridgewater, a place where our students and staff feel proud to enter every day, a campus feel that fits the town of West Bridgewater. We want to make sure it's appropriate for the town, a building that is safe and feels safe for our students, both physically and socially, emotionally, that's energy efficient and easy to operate and maintain, and logistical sites in terms of sufficient parking and reduced traffic. And we have continually talked about concerns about location, where is it going to go, and what's the best fit for the town and the community. Other goals, we're building this again for our future of our students and not our past. So we want to make sure the building is appropriate for students of all abilities. We want to make sure it's sustainable to serve students for generations, 50+ years. School, it's also adaptable and flexible, so we can utilize spaces. We want to make sure that large meeting spaces are not just used periodically, but hopefully used often throughout the day, so the money that's spent on a building and the spaces are utilized as often as possible. And we want to make sure we maintain a small school feel and culture that's so special in West Bridgewater, with our 3 elementaries, possibly going to combining 2, if not 3. So this diagram can be a bit confusing, but really what it's meant to show is both the lower schools. So on the left-hand side, you'll see clusters of our pre-K to 2 with centralized meeting locations in the middle. And on the right-hand side, the upper school, grades 3 to 6. and then the combined learning spaces in the middle. So these shared spaces, gym, cafeteria, learning commons, maintenance, and so forth, along with administration. It's just meant to conceptually show sizes and locations as when we go through making the design of the building. And as we went through, we prioritized some certain things for educational purposes. We want to make sure we're including small group spaces between classrooms that can be used for pullout. It can be used for related services, small group spaces, working in centers, that they're part of the classroom, but they're separated by glass, so there's still some privacy. We want to make sure we're extending learning spaces into our learning communities. So our hallways are not just used for passageways, but we'll have common spaces that people can meet, send groups out there. Hopefully we'll have classroom walls, but they'll be flexible, so there'll be learning going on throughout the entire building. We're talking about in early childhood and potentially upper elementary, so we want to make sure we have the appropriate sensory spaces spaced throughout the entire building. Dining is important, obviously, but we also want to make sure they're learning experiences and they're varied throughout the building. So we're going to look at varied dining experiences, both inside and outside. They can also be extended learning spaces. Our STEM areas, science, technology, engineering, and math, are designed to be a destination, so we'd have classrooms, but also integrating them into and embedding them into the learning environment. So in some of our common areas, we could pull groups down, maybe more than one classroom together, so they could expand the learning experience. Also, our library or media center to be a destination, but with also satellite spaces within the building, so they're getting their reading and literacy, not just having to travel to a media center, but it's going embedded into their classroom spaces. There's a lot that goes into this. There's a lot of effort. I commend our committees and our groups who have worked very hard. It's our goal to develop a school that works best for our students and our staff and our community, so we're all working together. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to James and Stephanie from HMFH.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, I'm James Liebman, and this is Stephanie McNeil with HMFH Architects. We're your designers for the project. I want to talk a little bit about what the progress has been so far, and this is specifically within this preliminary design program phase. So when we came on board, that starts when we came on board 4 months ago. There have been a number of school building committee meetings that occurred before that were in a different phase, that were organized around building their team or meeting the MSBA pre-requirements for the project. But since the preliminary design program began, there's been 6 public meetings, school building committee meetings. There's been the existing conditions investigation, where we reviewed the schools, all 3 schools, with our engineers. We met with the fire department and the police department and the water commissioner. There's been this whole process of educational visioning that Mark just went through, with the school tours and ed visioning, and that ultimately culminates in the development of a summary of spaces, which is a matrix of all of the spaces that the new school will hold for each of the enrollments that we're going to go through. And then critically, as Gary mentioned, there have been some decisions made by the committee in terms of an initial site selection and a narrowing down of the enrollment options given by the MSBA to ones that are meaningful to the community and to the committee. And then we've submitted this program document to the MSBA. So you've heard us talk about the enrollment alternatives. Here you see the 3 primary ones, 1 through 3, which we're really looking at because the MSBA requires it. Pre-K through 4, which provides certain opportunities. It replaces the Roselle Elementary School. It would replace the programs at Spring, both pre-K, K, and the district offices, and it pulls a grade out of Howard, making the existing Howard building less crowded. That would serve an enrollment of, a design enrollment of 750 students, and additionally, approximately 75 pre-K students. There's also the pre-K through 6th grade. This obviously replaces all 3 schools with a new facility for 1,070 students, design enrollment, plus that 75 pre-K. I'm going to be going through these enrollment alternatives. The assumption is that the aim of the project is to improve as much of the educational environment as possible for as many students as possible, to resolve as much of the overcrowding and facilities condition, and to minimize future projects and future expenses to the town. So for example, if Spring Street were to stay, it is very much overcrowded and would eventually become a future liability to the town of West Bridgewater. So, looking at the enrollment alternatives, the pros and cons for the pre-K through 4th grade. I don't have the 1 through 3. Again, that's really, we're really only looking at that because the MSBA requires it. The cons for that are self-evident. They don't resolve the overcrowding issues in the other 2 schools. They don't meet those assumptions. They don't improve the educational spaces for all of the other grades. So for pre-K through 4, it improves the educational environment for 6 grades, 6 of the 8 grades that we're talking about, pre-K being one of them. It solves the current projected overcrowding for those 6 grades, and it replaces 2 outdated facilities, Spring Street and Roselle. It also, as I mentioned, does alleviate some of the overcrowding at the Howard School, the 3rd school. But it does not maximize the state funding, the grant to the town. It does not, it leaves the 5th and 6th grade in the current configuration at Howard School. It does not improve the educational environment for those 2 grades, and it does not solve the outdated facility, which is in need of work, leaving potential future costs for the town of West Bridgewater. The pre-K through 6 has a much shorter list. It improves the educational environment for all 8 grades. And if you take into account this building from 10 years ago, there'll be new facilities for the whole, pre-K through 12th grade. It solves the current and projected overcrowding for everyone. It replaces all 3 outdated facilities with a new facility, whether that's an all-new build or an addition renovation project. It's still a new facility. And it leaves no remaining town-only facility costs. Obviously, this is a larger project and therefore more expensive. Yeah. So with that, to talk about the 3 sites, I'm going to hand over to Stephanie.
Thank you. So I'll start on Spring. And so as Gary noted earlier, we did look at Spring Street initially, and that was the first site to get ruled out. And the reasons for that were it is a very crowded site. We're in the middle senior high school that's also located on the Spring Street site. So the available space for building is either happening on one of the existing athletic fields, or it would happen on the footprint of the existing Spring Street school. And if we were to go down that route, that would mean the pre-K and kindergarten students who are there now would have to either be housed in modulars or some other swing space. And then again, having a building that's happening on that footprint of the Spring Street school is a very limited area of site, so the building would be either very tall. If we're trying to get your pre-K to sixth grade, that'd be an extremely tall building. If it was a smaller enrollment, you could make it, fit, but you're going to be crushed up against the boundaries of the site, so it's not really an amenable solution for the town. It also has the added complexity of needing to tie into the town's existing septic, which might trigger wastewater treatment plants needing to be involved. It's also adding to just the traffic of parents and students coming onto the site, which is already a very busy site with all the athletics and the middle senior high school that's happening here. So for those reasons, the Spring Street site was ruled off pretty early. Then moving on, we took a look deeper onto the Howard site to say, okay, what are the logistics we need to take into account if we're looking at a school construction project on the Howard site. Plus for the Howard is that it's closer to the other town schools, the other town amenities like the library are nearby, so it has kind of that campus feel going for it. But with those amenities being so close by, that again means that there's that additional traffic load of the senior center that's right next door, the library that's on the site, Friendship Park that's happening there. So there's other things that are happening on that site that we would need to be conscious of. Again, the Howard site is also the existing Howard building as well as the library tied into that town septic system. So if we're having a new building here, which is adding capacity to the site, that's again going to trigger a larger septic project because that's adding load to the site. And also, if we're building on Howard, because your 4th through 6th grade is already on that site, it eliminates our ability to look at a project that is only that K through 4 smaller building. Now, if you're building on this site that has the 4th through 6th grade, they need to have a home on the project as well. So it means a building project on Howard would have to be the pre-K through 6 at this site. It's just a diagram to kind of go over those logistics that are on the site. You'll note that there's existing septic and leach field that's on that southern portion of the site. So if we were building something there, that means we need to find a home for that existing septic first before we could touch there. That does leave these soccer fields that run along the eastern portion of the site. So that is available space, again, at the cost of taking up athletic space and those loss of those soccer fields. There's Friendship Park and the library. So then to look at the Roselle site, Roselle has presented itself with more pros for us because there is a bit more room to work with. We're here on a site that has just the 1st through 3rd grade, so we're open to the possibility here of having a pre-K through 4th building or pre-K through 6th. If we are in that pre-K to 4th model, the enrollment capacity for that building doesn't require a wastewater treatment plant, so that gives us the septic option here. On the flip side, the cons for it are that it is a bit farther away from town center than being located right there on the Howard School site. So there is that, understanding that to travel to this site, you are going through a neighborhood. It is kind of an existing condition in that you are having students and parents traveling there now to the Roselle School, so that's the flip side of that. And so as we've looked at Roselle, we are keeping in mind that there is a neighborhood that borders it to the south, so we're beginning to look at that site going, okay, we'd probably need a sort of a buffer to the neighborhood. We do note that there's the existing leach field and septic tanks to the southwest portion of the current building, so those need to be kept in mind when we're building. And then, of course, there are the wetlands that kind of border to the west of the building, so those have their buffer zones that we have to respect with wherever we're putting our new building. So moving forward, we're continuing to look deeper at the Roselle site to see what possibilities lie for us there. So a few diagrams here looking at, this is a pre-K through 4th option that we're beginning to look at. And I should note, these are diagrammatic footprints of what kind of square footage of a building in a building geometry can I fit on the site. It's not any type of a final design for a building. You'll see the dotted outline is the existing Roselle School. We're noting, a new, eliminating the S-curve that you have to currently maneuver to get into the building, so looking at kind of a straighter drive in to help with traffic flow, looking at, okay, we're going to need to allow for space that's to traverse around the new building that we might be building, looking at areas where can the septic go and how can we phase the project such that it's built in one school building phase. So in this scenario, students can stay in the existing Roselle while the new building is being built, and then upon the new building's completion, it can be occupied, and then the existing Roselle would be demolished. So we have a few bullet points. You'll see there is a cost noted, but I want to note that these are very preliminary orders of magnitude cost that are based on looking at all of our options, applying to them the kind of the typical cost per square foot in construction that we're seeing right now for similar type school projects. And so this gives us an order of magnitude when comparing a pre-K to fourth to a pre-K to sixth. It's not, at this point, a detailed cost estimate because we don't have a detailed design to go through that process with yet. Couple bullet points to note, just that because we're seeing the space that's most likely, our biggest space to house a new school building is happening on top of the existing building septic tank. So we know that going forward, there'd probably be an enabling project that would happen first to build new septic before we could build a new building. And then last bullet's just noting that in a pre-K to 4 enrollment, that means your students that were at the existing Spring Street School are now being housed here. What happens with the existing Spring Street School is a decision for the town that will be outside of the MSBA's project. So that can be something that the town can investigate further of, what is that building, what happens to the building? Is it repurposed? Is it demolished? Does it turn into fields? That's for, further discussion, and that will be a cost to that that's outside of the MSBA project. And then this is similar, just to look at a pre-K through 6 option. So you'll see that massing of the new building has expanded now because it's a larger square footage for the more students that are happening there. But we like to go through this exercise to test fit, to gut check for ourselves to say, let's make sure that we can fit on the site what we need to. Similar, looking at straightening out that drive as you come into the site and looking at where can we put septic wastewater treatment plant. And then again, similar bullets of enabling work here. And then in the pre-K through 6 scenario, now you have both the Spring Street School and the Howard School that, again, are being kind of turned back over to the town, or not turned over, but you have them open without elementary school students in them, and they're, become then for the town's use.
Great. So next, our OPM is going to present next steps.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, my name is Mitch Miller. I'm a project manager with PMA Consultants, the town's owner's project managers firm. So the next steps in the project will be the preferred schematic report. So first you heard everybody talking about the preliminary design program. That was step 1 with the MSBA. So step 2 will be this preferred schematic report, which starts now, or at the beginning of the year. We're already into it. So just to highlight what we did as part of the PDP, which I'll say the preliminary design program, James and Stephanie did a good job summarizing, but we looked at existing conditions, the educational visioning, developed some preliminary options, and then we eliminated some non-preliminary options. So what preferred schematic report is going to do is we're going to look at the options that we're carrying over into this, and we're going to further develop those. So as you can see, let me see if I can find the lasers. The middle? Bottom? Oh, button. Even better. So as you saw in the previous images, what we look like now is just kind of like these block diagrams showing the square footage that could potentially fit on a site. So we'll further develop that, and we're going to get into actual building shape. So this evolves. So this was a blob here, and then it gets more technical into this X shape. This is just an example of a previous project with the floor plans and the different wings for academic and community spaces and so on. So we'll refine those options. We'll look at the scope and the systems for that building or those buildings and those options. And then we'll assess all those options, which will lead us into the preferred solution that will be selected. So that will be the next 4 months or so. On the next slide, you'll see how we'll do that over the time frame. So we're aiming to submit this to the MSBA by May 1st. That's our deadline. So we have some work ahead of us here in the next few months that we're all looking forward to keep going on. We have a great team here, great building committee, so we're excited for that. So from now until May 1st, we'll be compiling that. In May, when we submit that, we'll also have a meeting with the MSBA to go over the facilities assessment. It's called the FAS, it's the Facilities Assessment Subcommittee meeting. Then in June of '25, we'll be waiting for the MSBA Board of Directors approval of our PSR package that gets submitted to them in May. We will continue to have these community forum meetings, and we're going to be targeting April of 2025 for our next meeting, so be on the lookout for that. We'll keep everybody updated there. And then I just want to get everybody up to speed on our overall schedule. You've heard some of these dates got thrown out before. I know James had talked about it and Gary too. We came on back in May for the OPM review panel. So then we got into the designer selection where we selected HMFH, and that was at the tail end of August. And then since September to now, we've been working on the PDP program, including creating that educational plan with Mark and his team and the staff, which was a big pull. So we're going to jump into PSR, as I just mentioned, and keep this timeline progressing onward. When we stay on track, we'll be looking for district approval and town funding, which will be in roughly 11, 12 months from now. One thing I also wanted to talk about is all this information. There's a lot of information that everybody's getting tonight. We're bringing the community up to speed on greater than 4 months worth of work. So Gary mentioned this earlier, but we do have a project website where everybody can go and find that information. It's wbesbuildingproject.com. You can find all of our documents, such as minutes and presentations, will be stored there. There's a contact us button that will email us. If you have any questions, just shoot us over an email. And on the questions note, I will hand it back over to Gary.
All right, we're happy to open it up to the floor. I know that's been a lot of information in a short amount of time, summarizing what we've been up to. So happy to answer any questions that you might have, recognizing that a lot of the answers might be we don't know yet, but I'm happy to elaborate that or turn it over to my colleagues for further information. One thing I did want to note before we start, though, is when James and Stephanie were talking about the options relative to turning over properties like Spring Street and/or maybe Howard as well, depending on the option for the town to do something with, the MSBA, as part of the project, will allow one tear down. So the assumption is if we end up at Roselle, obviously that'll be the tear down. It's possible, if it's decided somewhere along the way, not by just the school building committee, but by the town administration in general, that Spring Street and/or Howard don't have a future use within the town, that you could generate some economics of scale by doing tear downs for one or both at the same time with the same contractor. It would still, those two would have to be funded by the town, though, not part of the project. You'd get one school and one school only. So I just wanted to mention that. Any questions that anybody has? And I'll ask you to go to the mic so that the folks in the room can hear, as well as the people who will be watching online. Any questions? I would if it was just us, but because we're online. Yeah, yeah, sure.
Curious, number one, how many feet was that buffer zone that was on the map with
It's between 60 and 100 feet of area that we won't cut trees.
Yeah, why don't you come up here?
I
Yeah.
apologize. You have to go to the mic, I can go to the mic, right? Sure.
You just tap that mic and make sure it's on, the mic is on. Sir, can you just tap that mic, make sure the mic is on? Yeah, thank you. Just on the top there.
So we've been looking at, yeah, oh, right, it's not on. So I'll repeat the question since your mic wasn't on. The question is, how large is this proposed neighborhood buffer? What's drawn here is about 60 feet. The idea being that there would be no, tree removal within that zone. We'd love to make it a little bigger. We've got a pretty tight site with some of the constraints that are on this one as well, in terms of wetlands, and so we're trying to figure that out.
Can you go to the map that actually has the septic in it? There you go. That new road coming through, is that to the left or the right of the existing path?
The existing path, it is. It
Not
is.
the existing
I don't know
road,
which
but
way
the
is left or right. It is below the existing. So the existing path. There it is. Comes in like this. It comes up like that.
Yeah, no. That's the road. There's a path that cuts
Sorry.
through the,
Sorry. It is approximately on the existing path.
it's on the.
Approximately existing.
Okay. My next question was the septic area. This spring, that area was 3 inches, 4 inches underwater.
We have begun a lot of site investigation. We've had a wetland scientist out to the site. We've had, we're about to have some soil testing done in this area. We will have much better information about the opportunities for exactly where septic can and cannot go
Yeah, I was
in the
just
coming
curious
coming
why it
months.
didn't position itself up towards the top, above the road.
And again, it's not, as Mitch just mentioned, it's not the final location. We will be, exploring lots of locations along this site.
Just wanted to warn you, take that into
Fair,
consideration.
thank you.
And I was curious about, since this will take up a larger footprint, what's the idea for water abatement, let's just say? Some of these houses on the very end of the neighborhood are already in, quote, a floodplain zone. Is this going to now displace more water into the neighborhood, that it'll actually encroach more houses into a floodplain and make the existing houses that already are in and abutting the river that goes through in even a worse situation?
No, there is, a long process of permitting and approvals with the Conservation Committee, our civil engineers, our geotechnical engineers. The idea is that there will be no additional water pushed into the neighborhood.
Okay, I guess I'm good for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Sure. Other questions? And again, would you mind double checking the mic, please? Yeah, thank you.
Hello, good evening. I'm Tim Hay, your conservation agent, and I just have a few questions, mainly because I've been to the site 3 times in the last few months. And a project this large, normally coming before the town, there would be a delineation done for the wetland line. Looking at what they're using, it's the DEP line, which is notoriously inaccurate. I can also tell you they did not use the last delineation done when the septic system was upgraded. So they really need to get that delineation done before they even explore areas to do test pits. I can tell you the driveway where they expect to put it through has at least 2 wetland areas in there, which do not show on this plan. So my suggestion, between the stormwater system you're going to have to create and the wetlands you're going to have to either replicate or deal with, a delineation would be one of the first things I'd look at.
Yep, that's part of the plan, Tim. We appreciate that. So again, just like the fact that, what was the technical term, Mitch, globs of the buildings? Yeah, blobs. Don't treat anything we're showing as a final design. It's just where we were at a snapshot in time when the first phase report was due to the MSBA. And, we have a lot of due diligence left to do at this site before we move forward with any sort of formal design. And that's why it takes so much time to get that next phase done and then to go into final schematic design as well. We have a lot of work ahead of us, and we're at a very preliminary point. But there absolutely will be a... Yes, yeah, there will be a delineation is the key point, the takeaway from that. Other questions?
It seems like this is a done deal. Is this something that the townspeople are going to vote on, or did they already and maybe I missed it?
The only thing that was voted on was the feasibility study. So the only vote that's occurred about this project is the 1.2 million to do the feasibility study, which takes us basically through the schematic design process. And then, once we have a preferred design, we'll flesh that out with full costs. And the costs are not just our team putting those together. Those are third-party validated. Same thing we did for this project. And then that's what comes forward for a town vote. And as Mitch mentioned, our best guess for that happening would be roughly a year from now, before we come to the town. And that's if the school building committee makes the recommendation to move forward. Then that would be the final design based on the very clear design of what that building looks like, where it's situated, and what the costs are anticipated for that.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I got a question. Was it ever covered, the current age and condition of the 3 existing buildings?
Tonight, Evan, no, we didn't specify. I think we mentioned that when we went for the feasibility. The Spring Street is 62.
56, 58, and 68 are the 3 ages.
68 is the Roselle.
Correct.
Yeah, and Howard had a basically bare bones renovation in '93. But that's roughly the ages.
Okay.
Yep.
So the Howard would be the most viable to keep?
I mean, theoretically, but any substantial renovation that's done to that project, it's woefully out of date as it relates to the codes that have changed significantly in the last 30 years. Fire protection would be a key factor there. Any renovation we do there, there's no fire sprinkler system in that building. Would have to have a fully sprinklered building with any significant renovation in that building.
Okay.
It's probably worth saying that for all 3 buildings, the systems are, heading towards end of life, and require sort of a lot of maintenance to keep them running now. The mechanical, the plumbing, well, the mechanical and electrical are the big ones.
Okay. Yeah, and another one of the, I guess, my concerns or questions with the project would be adding so many grades within the same school. And I saw that with the K through 6 plan, there was, I guess, 2 separated buildings with a common space building in between. And then with the K through 4, you were saying you'd keep, what was it, 5 and 6 in the Howard? Would there be any possibility of doing something like K through 1 in Howard and then moving 2 through 6 into a new building so that students didn't downgrade upon graduation from one school to another?
I think one of the goals would be to try to consolidate schools in terms of combining, staffing and limiting transitions between schools. Spring Street School probably is not viable for an early childhood, so I think keeping them together and to retrofit Howard for any grades other than 5 to 6, you'd have to change around, add bathrooms if it was preschool and so forth. So what makes the most sense would be the pre-K to 4 or the pre-K to 6.
Okay. And, just to reiterate again, one of my biggest concerns would be the separation of the older kids from the younger kids, because, pre-K, you'd have kids as young as, what, 5 years old?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why we, certainly as we go more into design, we would have like a lower and an upper elementary level with some shared spaces, but they wouldn't be shared at the same time. They would be separated in different parts of the building, but we'd have, specialized places for them within the building.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? We were good, but we weren't that good. No other questions? I don't want to keep you longer than necessary, but.
So what's the expected tax impact?
Again, that's.
Rough idea?
We can't answer that because we don't have a final cost. We don't have the final reimbursement rate for what MSBA. They recalculate that for the communities every year. So we know it's 54.7% based on the feasibility study. That's a guarantee for this part of the project. When we come back for funding, there'll be a new calculation. It'll also be impacted by the design. For instance, this building here, we were able to get increases on that reimbursement rate by what we did with energy efficiency and some other credits. So all that plays into the final calculation. Certainly when we come forward for the final design with a recommendation for a town vote, all that will be clearly laid out in terms of what the impact would be. But again, you're not talking for, sometime down the road before that happens.
So the wetlands here where it comes out to Crescent Street, crossing there, what's the plan?
Again, we don't know. We know the wetlands are there. I mean, we don't know whether or not we want to or need to make use of an access road back there. We'd like to avoid it because of the extra cost in doing that. Obviously, there's a bridge that would have to be built for us to do that. That was one of the key discussions that we had with a separate meeting with police and fire. I mean, both police and fire chiefs are on the committee, but we had a separate sit-down with them to go over the public safety aspects, which to me are the bigger aspects of that building. And I think they're on the record of saying that they can get by from a public safety standpoint with the single access with the proper design based on the fact it's going to be a larger school building there. So, I mean, I'd like to say we know the wetlands are back there, but I'm hopeful that any design will minimize the impact of those wetlands, and perhaps we won't even need to look at that separate access road out to Crescent Street. I'm concerned about the availability of frontage out there that the town, what the town has available for access for frontage out there to be able to make use of a viable access road onto Crescent Street. So personally, this is just me speaking, almost want to avoid that if we can.
So will the MSBA reimburse for building a bridge?
No.
So it's only for the building?
Yes, well, the building and fields. There's a certain percentage that gets put in the MSB calculation for fields related to the school building. But again, for this project, we did the replacement of the athletic fields and the bleachers and the lighting. That was all an extra expense to the town. I mean, for the record, I chaired that committee as well, and we came in under budget with that, even with that extra expense. So.
Yeah, it's great that it came in under budget. We got a lot of other issues in town also.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I do understand the school doesn't work, but we do have other issues.
And just for a point of reference.
We have water issues in this town that are unbelievable.
For a point of reference, this building at the time of the final project was roughly $63 million for a design enrollment of 620 students. And if we tried to build this building today, it would be roughly $170 million for the same size facility. So we understand the cost impact, and I mean, the committee is very sensitive to that. And certainly we have a majority of the school building committee are town residents, so they're especially sensitive to that.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, my question is on the road coming in. Now, if we don't have one in and one out, I live right across from the school. how much of my property is going to be taken to make this entrance work?
There's no talk of taking property. We expect to use the same entrance road. Will it get wider once you get in
I'm
there?
not talking about this road, I'm talking about North Elm Street.
Right, North Elm Street.
I don't want, I mean, I've been there for 50 years, and
Yeah.
it's been great. I don't want to lose my whole front yard.
We're not planning on taking any.
And it's not only
property.
me, there's other neighbors that are in that area.
We have no plan to take any property from any neighbors. The same entrance, will the configuration change once you get into the property? Yes. We talked about eliminating the S, and that will allow us to widen, and obviously, we're going to be very creative with the parking, because you're going to have a bigger staff population than we have in the current school right now. But we are not doing anything with any neighbor's property.
Thank you very much.
Anything else? Last call?
I just wanted to ask if there was any kind of ballpark estimate on what the feasibility for potentially renovating Howard Street would be, because we're talking about a $48 million difference between the two plans, the pre-K through 4 and the pre-K through 6, plus if we do the K through 6, the added cost of potentially taking down Howard Street. So
Yeah, we really don't have an answer to that, and I assume what's behind your question is if we take 4 out, to grade 4 out, and are left with 5 and 6, and what that would take to renovate that, to do a renovation there. Again, that would be outside this project. We could certainly go back to the MSBA and get back in line and do another request for a project for a renovation of the existing Howard School, based on the fact there are only 2 grades that, but I can't even predict at this point what a price tag would be on something like that.
right, because I mean I think we're correct in saying that it's a good campus feel. It's got the playground, the library. It's right in the center. Kind of seems a shame that if it was renovated in the 90s to toss it aside now.
Yeah, I mean, a 30-year renovation still leaves us very short in comparison of what we have to do what we have to do today with that building.
Not yet.
Yeah, the school sucks.
Okay, one at a time,
Okay,
please.
maybe
Thank
it's been a
you.
decade since I've been there.
What's that?
Thanks, Gary.
Okay. Anything else?
My concern is, right now, we have a so-called fire lane going from Goldie to the
Yep.
Roselle. Will that be still used as a fire lane, or will that be used as a drive-in, drive-out?
There are no, and I was adamant about this with our designers on day one, there are no plans to make that road any different than what it was. It's not even a road, to make that access any different. We have no intention of making that a formal access point and dump vehicles on a daily basis into that
That
neighborhood.
neighborhood, okay.
Yeah, absolutely not.
That's great. Thank you.
So there was talk of a wastewater treatment plant. So elaborate a little bit.
What is that?
Yeah,
You want to describe what a wastewater? treatment-
wastewater treatment plant.
Well, now I need to bring my civil engineer, but I'll start with the wastewater treatment facility, whatever it is, whether it's a treatment plant or a septic plant, depends on the number of people. What you need depends on the number of
Say we're going
people.
with the full-blown,
So for the smaller enrollment, you don't need a wastewater treatment
Right.
plant. You just need a septic system, which is, what you've seen what you know at Howard. For the larger enrollment, you will need a wastewater treatment plant. It's a somewhat similar facility. It's got tanks underground. Has a pump house. It's just a larger, more robust system requirement. Beyond that, I really would need my civil engineers
So now-
and our wastewater treatment plant consultant.
so now is the town gonna have to hire somebody with a wastewater treatment plant license?
I don't know
For
the-
maintenance?
I don't know the answer to that.
And with the new school, is there gonna be added staff, janitorial, or do we have enough people on staff already to take care of the school? I don't know who wants to answer it, but.
I can give it a shot. I don't see us needing to add staff. There may be some overtime, some attrition, reducing staff, maybe some duplicate personnel, but not immediately. But I don't think we don't envision a need to add staff.
Okay. I'd be interested in some more information on the wastewater treatment plant, if we have to hire somebody or whatnot.
Fair.
Thank you.
I've never heard that as a requirement, but we certainly would look into it as part of that. And from a building standpoint, my understanding is it's not a very big building per se.
Can I add one more thing?
Yep.
Any addition of enrollment, any addition of people to the town site will require a wastewater treatment plant. It is basically at capacity as it exists.
So what that means is if for some reason in our due diligence at Roselle, we end up with a dead end for whatever reason, because of the wetlands, because of we don't have the acreage to be able to do either a septic or wastewater in the proper location, and we come back to Howard, we're at a wastewater treatment facility for the only option we have at Howard. And doing that, by the way, puts us out of sync with the MSBA schedule and would put us, would result in a delay to the project. I don't think they would kick us back to the back of the line again, but it would delay the approval process, and you know what that means. A delay would just result in further costs down the road. So obviously we want to try to avoid that. Anything else? All right, well, I want to thank you for your participation tonight. I will tell you our default meeting for the School Building Committee is the fourth Tuesday of every month at 5:30 in the Learning Commons. Over the next few months with this phase of the report, we'll be meeting on the second and fourth Tuesdays in February, March, and April. Just one meeting 2 weeks from tonight, but those are open. You're welcome to come to attend the meeting, and obviously they'll be posted on the community access subsequently to the meeting as well. So thank you, appreciate your time.